Hey everyone, and welcome back to Purposeful Armament. Today we have a different video for y'all, and I honestly kind of hope that it will help some people. I'm going to be flat out honest with you guys. Over this past year of shooting, I have felt pretty stagnant. I haven't felt like I've really improved as a shooter. I haven't felt like I've gotten worse as a shooter, which I guess is a good thing, but I definitely haven't felt like I have improved as a shooter. I felt like I've stayed pretty much baseline. Now, I have very much had the privilege of having someone follow me around with a camera while I shot most of my drills. There are tons of videos on our YouTube channel, tons of clips of me doing drills, and that's probably 75% of what I actually do. There's a lot of drills that you guys don't see, but I have recorded, and there's a lot of drills that we also just don't record. And as I was feeling this stagnation, I went back and started looking at some of my older drills and comparing it with my newer ones. I actually have improved a lot since this same time last year. So I was really wondering why I hadn't personally felt like I had improved as a shooter. So I started having long conversations with some of my shooting pals about how you track progress and how you keep from feeling like you're stagnating. And so I think I've discovered a sort of interesting paradox. There's almost like an exponential curve whenever it comes to training. At the beginning of your training, you see a lot of progress. You get good quickly, especially if you're putting in the work. That was the same thing for me. But once you get to a certain level, the changes you make are small and minute, and they take a lot longer to materialize in your training. So you are improving, but because it's such a slow burn, so to speak, you can have a hard time noticing it if you're not explicitly looking for it. And I honestly think that there's probably a lot of gun owners out there who feel very similarly. Now, I recently saw a post from Lucas over at T-Rex Arms that was talking more or less about training and how you can feel as though you've become bored with shooting. And I don't think it's necessarily boredom. I think that people feel that they become stagnant, that they've kind of reached the pinnacle of what they can be as a shooter, and they feel unmotivated and lack the desire to try and push forward. And I know I am kind of the exact same way until I really sat down and thought about this for a while. And so I think I found a couple of ways that can help people avoid the feeling of stagnation, the feeling of not progressing in your shooting. And I'll share those two with you right now. But just before we go into that, I want to remind you that this is just my opinion on my personal experience in the shooting sphere. First thing, I think that you should structure your training. And secondly, I think you need to document. And with both of those two items, I think you can pretty much completely overcome any feeling of stagnation or plateau. So, structuring your training. How does one structure their training? Now, I love mag dumping trash as much as anyone else. I love doing these random crazy drills that you come up with kind of on the spot and seeing who in your group can shoot them faster. I think it is fun. But there is one problem with that. You can't get a solid baseline. You don't score them. You don't have a par time. Number one, I think that you can still do the fun random drills. You can still do the mag dumping trash. You can still have fun at the range. But I think that you should dedicate part of your range session to be a dedicated, consistent course of fire, or a series of drills that are always going to be the same that you hit every single time you go to the range. For us, we start out with a sort of baseline course of fire, which all has par times. Now, I know some people don't necessarily like par times for insert whatever reason. I think ultimately, as long as you understand why the par time is what it is, and it's not just some arbitrary number that you have created so that you can feel as though you are making par, or some arbitrary number that someone else has created so that they can feel like they are a better shooter than everyone else. I think par times are fine because they allow you to compare yourself with what is acceptable. We use that par course of fire as a way of obtaining essentially a baseline of where you're at as a shooter at that given time. After that, we have some drills that we kind of pick and choose from. We have some drills from the T-Rex Arms Course of Fire for both rifle and pistol, and we have some other drills that are sprinkled in there. But the main point is that every single drill that we do in this sort of training regiment, if you will, are consistent drills that we run every single time we go to the shooting range. Now, the reason that we do this is because, for instance, like the T-Rex Arms drills have a hit factor, which takes into account your time for completing the drill, as well as your hits, to assign you a score. And every single drill has a score that gives you hard, raw data. I don't know why I said it like that, but it is what it is. It gives you raw data, okay? Consistency is key whenever you're measuring these variables. You want good, legitimate, raw data to compare yourself against. And I know that a lot of people don't like taking the time to sit down and write out hits and mark down times and put pasties onto cardboard, but it is something that you should do so that you have the data and you can actually compare. So don't just run the drills just to do the drills. Run the drills with the intention of actually calculating the score and taking note of it. Now, I don't think that there's a right drill or a wrong drill. I just think that consistency is really the main factor that you want to go for. And make sure to take a notepad, the T-Rex Arms sheets of paper, whatever you need to do, your phone, it can be whatever, but take something to the range with you that you can actually write down and take note of what your scores are, what your times are, those kind of things for every single drill that you run, so that you have a running history of how you performed every single time that you ran that drill. And over time, you will start to see that those numbers, those scores will start to increase, the hit factors will start to increase, and the times will start to drop. And that can be incredibly motivating to look back on and realize, oh, hey, I don't feel it, but I actually am getting quicker at this drill. Or I actually am getting quicker overall as a shooter. I even think that it would be a good idea to write down little notes after you complete a course of fire with kind of how you were feeling about the drill. Maybe you have one day where you're kind of particularly off with your handgun. Maybe make a note of it saying, you know, I felt really off with my handgun today. It was a rough day, so my hit factor is lower, my score is lower, my times are longer. Maybe you identify that you have a slow draw. Take note of that so that you can address that the next time you're at the shooting range or as you're doing your dry fire. Things like that I think are incredibly helpful for allowing you to continue to progress. So make sure to structure your training time. It doesn't have to be the entire training time, but just structure out a chunk of training time where you can hit those drills consistently every single time that you're out there. And also take some utensil or your phone or something so that you can make a note of and take history of how you performed every single course of fire, every single time that you perform that course of fire. And like I said, over time, you will start to see the hit factors and the scores increase. You will start to see the times drop, and you will be able to look back and you will be able to erase any doubts that you have that you are progressing as a shooter, and you'll be able to identify your progress. So I hope that you guys really did gain something from this, and maybe if you didn't, maybe you at least just enjoyed my kind of rambling. Let me know in the comments below how you're tracking your training, and I will see you guys in the next video. Remember, stay armed. Smoking over there.